What's up, everyone? Welcome into DodgerHeads, presented by DodgerBlue.com, part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. And we have got a treat today. Justin Lorber, a.k.a. Future Dodgers, joining us. Justin, thank you for your time. We got tons of prospects coming in, a couple prospects going out, and a whole bunch of Twitter questions. So thanks for joining us. This is a good week for you when the Dodgers acquire some new prospects, huh?
It's pretty rare. It's happened several times already this offseason, and notable prospects too.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna work from oldest trades to newest. There are 3 trades the Dodgers have executed that sent guys, or excuse me, that brought prospects in, some obviously involving some guys that are prospects as well. And then we'll also talk a little bit about the Tyler Glasnow trade, which meant sending Ryan Pepio and Johnny DeLuca out. But let's start with some of the guys that have come in, Justin. The first trade was Victor Gonzalez and Yorby Vivas clearing out some 40-man roster spots in exchange for Trey Sweeny from the New York Yankees. So tell us a little bit about Sweeny and kind of where he fits in the Dodger system.
Yeah, Sweeney is a guy who I liked a lot back in his draft class in 2021. Yeah, 2021. Was a big fan of his. Yankees took him a few picks before the Dodgers. The Dodgers took Maddox Bruns. He's largely done pretty well in the Yankee system. Hasn't had like a huge breakout like maybe some people had hoped. What the Dodgers are really getting here is a little more ceiling. I think if you ask me between Vivas and Sweeny, who's more likely to be a major leaguer, I think it's Vivas. But when it comes to ceiling, Sweeny, a little bit more positional value at shortstop, even if he's not a plus defender there. Certainly more power projection. Vivas is younger and has already been at AAA a little bit. Meanwhile, Sweeny played the entire year last year at AA. Certainly did well. Under 20% strikeout rate, 13% walk rate, 118 weighted runs created plus, also had 20 stolen bases, 13 home runs. I think what I'm looking for is, can the Dodgers help him get into more of that power? Some good approach. I think that had been something around the time of the draft where you'd wondered what team, if a team drafts him, are they going to be able to get into more of that raw power? Hasn't happened yet. Last 2 years, last year he had 13 home runs. Year before that, he had 16 home runs. Granted, it's not a full season. Still, I'd like to see him lift the ball a little bit more. That's something that the Dodgers have done fairly well at with their prospects on the offensive side over the last few years, getting them to really get the most of all of their raw power. And I wouldn't be surprised to see him start out the year at AAA, or maybe he starts off the year at AA, goes back for a little bit, then moves up. But someone who could be in play as soon as next year and also doesn't take up a 40-man roster spot, which has been a kind of a theme this offseason.
Yeah, I want to get to the 40-man thing briefly. I know one of the things about Sweeny is, can he stick at shortstop? You mentioned it's not going to be plus defense. From where you sit, is he a guy that projects to be a major league shortstop?
I wouldn't say like yes with a lot of confidence, but he's played there so far. The book is you keep him there at short until you can't anymore.
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't be surprised to see him move to second or third. He's a bigger guy, so he could play some third base too. But yeah, I think for now, I don't want to guarantee it or say it with a lot of confidence, but I think they'll keep him at short for now.
Okay. But you mentioned the 40-man thing, and I think that's an important thing for us to touch on briefly, because so much of these trades is not simply about how good is player A being traded for player B, and is this guy better than that guy, that kind of thing. So many of these moves for the Dodgers, one of their top priorities was clearing out 40-man roster spots so that they could make trades and signings elsewhere. And in the case of Vivas, he had already used, 2 of his option years, and so the flexibility that they were going to have with him moving forward was also a little bit limited. So I feel like that's an important piece when evaluating these trades, is it's not so much are Gonzalez and Vivas better than Sweeny. It's Vivas and Gonzalez for, however many option years you get of Sweeny plus the 40-man roster spot for the next year, right? Like, is that how you sort of evaluate some of these trades to some degree? It's not the most important thing, but I just think it's a part of the evaluation.
I think it definitely is. And I think Vivas was in a little bit of an unfortunate situation with his 40-man situation. Got added the lockout year. Even though he had only been at high A and he hadn't even played a full season at high A, him and Eddie's and Leonard both got added, same situation. And it's just tough when those guys are so far away, and they're not, the top prospect in the organization who you have to protect. They're certainly notable prospects, but it's tough to keep those guys on the 40-man when there's just really no realistic likelihood of them impacting the roster. And with him, already using 2 option years, this is option year number 3, and he's only had a brief experience at AAA. So he's not starting the year at the majors. Maybe gets a major league opportunity in 2024, but no option years after that. So from a flexibility perspective, this is where this trade really makes sense. And I think, considering it was known that the Dodgers had to clear out some 40-man space for a particular pitcher/hitter that they wanted to sign, for them to trade Gonzalez, who, end of the bullpen, up and down relief arm, had some success, but past couple of years has been inconsistent, and Vivas with his 40-man situation to get back a legit prospect in Sweeny and a legit prospect at a position of need in the organization, shortstop in the upper minors, pretty good deal.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that, because that's actually kind of sums up why I like this second deal so much. When you factor in what the Dodgers' options were, how desperate they were in the situation, and evaluating what they got back. I'm talking about the trade that sent Brian Hudson out and brought Justin Chambers in. Now, Justin Chambers, I'm not going to sit here and say that this is a guy who is going to be amazing and is a surefire thing. But when you trade Brian Hudson, who has already been DFA'd and who was, is probably going to be a back, or, like a 7th best reliever on most major league teams, but clearly had no pathway to playing time or standing on the roster for the Dodgers, and you swap him for a guy in Chambers who was drafted just a year ago and received a signing bonus that would have been, I believe it's the 5th highest number that the Dodgers handed out in the 2023 draft. So you're basically trading Brian Hudson for a guy that just a year ago, as a high schooler, was drafted, was basically slotting in somewhere in like a 4th or 5th round pick as far as he was paid. So Chambers is an unknown high school guy, only been in the pros for a year, but just on the surface, Justin, this deal was one I liked a lot.
Yeah, very much agreed. Anytime I think you can get something from a DFA trade, it's going to be a plus, instead of just having to trade them for cash or let another team make a waiver claim, especially for a guy like Hudson, who doesn't have a lot of major league experience. Reliever, already used an option year. The list of factors go on as to why I personally just expected a waiver claim. And look, Chambers. So one thing I do want to mention, he got 4th round value. That was his signing bonus value, even though he was picked in the 20th round. One thing to factor in, though, and especially with the Brewers draft last year, their day 3, rounds 11 to 20, they took a ton of prep guys. I think it was like 8 of their 10 picks or something like that were either high school or JUCO guys who would need to be given, a bigger bonus to get them away from their commitment to a 4-year school. And sometimes in those situations, you're agreeing with certain guys, other guys decide to go to school, and sometimes you're left with 1 or 2 guys, and you have this pot, and you'd say, okay, well, what will you take? We have this much. I'm not saying that is what happened here, but that's where the 4th round value could be a little misleading, because it's not like, well, they decided this is what his value is and they paid him. It could possibly, not guaranteeing it could possibly be this is what they had left. He was the last guy at the table. They gave it all to him.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great point. Okay, the third trade, and this is the one that just happened yesterday, Michael Busch and Yency Almonte to the Chicago Cubs in exchange for Jackson Ferris and Zaire Hope. Let's talk real quick about Michael Busch and your thoughts on the Dodgers moving on and kind of this being the deal that ends up getting him out of Los Angeles. And then we can talk more specifically about Ferris and Hope.
Yeah. With Michael Busch, he didn't have anything left to prove in the minors. He spent the last 2 years at AAA. This year, he tore up the league, improved basically every offensive metric, standard ones, peripheral ones, analytic ones, whatever you want to look at. I think almost across the board, he improved. The question is always, where is he going to play? The Dodgers announced him as a second baseman in the draft, even though most people saw him as a first baseman, played a lot of second base, was not, I'm not even sure if I'd call him an average defender, but he held his own there in the minors, enough to think that, okay, maybe you can play him there in the majors, but his best position was going to be first base. Last year, they started playing him at third. They played him a little bit in left field, I think, and the year before, a little bit in left field. His best position is going to be first base or DH. Those spots are not open on this current iteration of the Dodgers team, and they're not going to be open for several years.
Yeah.
And sending him back to AAA doesn't do anything. It doesn't do anything for the Dodgers because it just decreases his value because he doesn't have anything left to prove there. And it doesn't help him at all because the development that he needs to continue to get better isn't going to be in the major leagues.
Yeah.
So good deal on both ends from that perspective.
Now, Almonte, the other piece of this, kind of similar to Victor Gonzalez. I think he's a better pitcher than Victor Gonzalez, but it's a guy who was on the 40-man roster. It's a guy who had no options left. So if he was on the major league roster, the Dodgers were going to have the ability to send him down to bring up a sixth starter. So as much as I hoped that Almonte would figure it out because I think he has a high-end potential, I'm not surprised to see him moved. So Ferris is the headliner here. I think it was Jim Callis who tweeted, this is a guy who has the potential to someday be the best left-handed pitching prospect in all of Major League Baseball. There was a Cubs guy that you retweeted who said that both Ferris and Hope could potentially be top 50 MLB prospects. Like the ceiling on both of these guys is that high. So Ferris and Hope, I'll let you kind of start wherever you want with those two.
Yeah, Jackson Ferris, big lefty, nice fastball. Best secondary pitch is going to be a breaking ball. Some command questions. He didn't go very deep into games in his first pro season last year. If this sounds similar to Maddox Bruns, it's because it is. And I don't want to say that they're the same player. I think the present stuff, the present velocity is more there with Bruns. There are also probably some larger command questions there with Bruns as well. But they are similar, I think, buckets of players. So it's not super unsurprising that the Dodgers were interested in Ferris. And he's 19. He turns 20 this month. So still very young, very projectable, ton of upside, all the buzzwords you like to throw on young pitchers with potential. This is it.
Real quick, we talked about kind of the bonus number when it came to Chambers. I mentioned on the show that Daniel and I did yesterday that Ferris got like the 24th biggest bonus. I think it was 2022 when he came out. Does that number mean anything to you? Like, do you sort of, because I know in the first few rounds, just because a guy's a third or fourth round pick doesn't necessarily mean he's a third or fourth round player. It could mean he's worse, but they thought they could get him there and save some money. In Ferris's case, like, do you interpret that as, hey, this is a guy who very well could have been a first or second round pick, but they were able to save some money somewhere and pay him like a first rounder?
Yeah, I think he could have been a first round pick. Maybe not top of the draft, but there's always a lot of variance with how people do these prep arms. And ultimately, this is you are buying them out of a commitment. So I don't necessarily know if there was an open market instead of a draft and you still had the bonus pools and each team could budget the way they want.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if he'd get the same amount. I'm not sure if every team would agree this is a $3 million first round type of player, but that's what they paid for him.
Yeah.
That's
a fair point, that a high school guy's number might just trend higher because it's just going to cost more to get him. And so that's a fair point. I'm going to be honest. The Maddox Bruns comparison does scare me a little bit because he's a first round pick that doesn't necessarily feel like he has lived up to that for the Dodgers. Am I exaggerating on the Bruns front?
Exaggerating the comparison?
Like sort of the disappointment, I guess.
Bruns has not kind of taken the breakout step forward yet that I think people would have hoped.
Yeah.
Still looking for the command to continue to get better. But there was a great blurb. I want to say it was in the baseball prospectus write-up of their top Dodgers prospects. I was like, look, the command is not good enough to be a starting pitcher right now. That's just what it is. Don't know if it will get there. But when you think about someone like Blake Snell, who struggles with watts, struggles with command, doesn't pitch deep into games, but has great stuff, that guy just won the Cy Young. So if you have great stuff, the command you need is much lower. And no one questions the stuff of Maddox Bruns.
Got it.
So I think it is whether he continues to take a step forward. He's only 21 years old. I think he's 21. I think he's 21. Still a young pitcher.
Yeah.
I wouldn't write him off yet, even though the breakout hasn't happened.
Fair. Well, talk to us a little bit about Zaire Hope. Kind of an interesting guy. I was trying to look up. Let's see. Yeah. Yes, 21 on Maddox Bruns. Turns 22 in June. Zaire Hope. He's an interesting guy. Another guy who got a reasonable sized bonus that was kind of bigger than where he was drafted because he was committed to play at North Carolina. I saw some people that were talking about his bat and they love his bat. I saw other people saying, I think it was Joe Doyle who said, I know a team that had a 3rd round grade on him as a pitcher. The Dodgers have been down this road before with a guy who's a hitter and a pitcher, and that worked out pretty well so far with River Ryan. So give me what you know about Hope and kind of your view on the pitching hitting thing.
Yeah. So what I knew about him prior to today, little, if any. It's possible, I'm just not remembering him from draft research the past summer, but really not much. That said, this seems like a guy who is going to be worth a lot more than an 11th round pick. Okay. In potentially in the years to come, and someone who, looking back on this deal, as who's definitely like the 4th most notable guy in this deal, might not be that way in a few years. Toolsy, athletic, plus run times. The exit velocity and batted ball data has been pretty impressive from what I've seen. Still some concern with the bat to ball skills, which you see in very small sample of Arizona Complex League games when he played last summer. I think this is a really fun acquisition. Overall, this is someone who, this is the kind of player who 2 years from now, if it pans out, it's going to be, how do they let the Dodgers get this guy as the 4th or as the 2nd piece of this deal and the 4th piece overall in this deal? How did they let them get this guy?
Yeah. Do you have any sense of hitting? Is there any chance you think that the Dodgers make this guy a pitcher?
I don't want to say no. I think from what I've seen, he's definitely a prospect as a pitcher.
Okay.
That said, I don't know if the pitching tools are more enticing than the hitting tools right now. And it's also a lot easier to go from hitter to pitcher than to go from pitcher to hitter. I don't know if it'd be worth it to transition him to a pitcher, and then if that doesn't work out, he's a hitter again, versus he's a hitter until, or if it doesn't work out, and then he might be a pitcher, because that side of him's enticing too.
Quickly on these 4. So we've got Ferris, Hope, Chambers, and Sweeny. Have you started to think about maybe where these guys slot in organizationally? I know, we were talking beforehand. MLB Pipeline put out that Ferris was going to slot in as the number 5 prospect. We don't know if they're comparing January 2024 Ferris versus midseason 2023 everybody else on the Dodgers, or how they navigate that. And not to say that these lists are going to be the same for everybody anyways, but have you thought about where these 4 guys might slot in, even just roughly? Is Ferris a top 5 guy? Is he a top 10 guy? Take it wherever you want.
I think Ferris and Sweeny borderline top 10, probably top 15.
Okay.
Hope, I do want to look a little bit more into him and talk to some people. I think right now, probably I'd say definitely top 40 or 35.
Okay.
I don't know how much higher I'd go yet. That said, definitely seemed like someone who probably somewhere 20 to 40. I'll go 20 to 40 with Hope. With Chambers,
back end of the top 100 kind of a deal.
50 to 80, something. He's also he had Tommy John last spring, so not sure if he'll be ready to pitch at the start of the year. And even if he is, they'll work him up slowly. So that's another kind of slow burn. Not anyone who I expect to see, it's not like next April it's going to be, oh, wow, Justin Chambers is a steal. I think if he pans out, be a little bit of a wait.
That's crazy to me when I think about that. Michael Busch basically netted them the same level-ish of prospect that Victor Gonzalez and Yorby Vivas did. And I know like Almonte's in there and Hope is in there, and it's not necessarily straight apples to apples. But when you talk about Gonzalez and Vivas netting you a guy who's fringe top 10 compared to Michael Busch netting you, because I think Yancey had value on his own. I don't think Yancey maybe gets you Hope on his own, but I think he's more valuable than Brian Hudson was at the time. And so it's just interesting looking at those two trades as I hear those rankings.
Yeah, and the other thing too is upside.
Yeah.
Of these four guys, Ferris has clearly.
Yeah.
And I like Trey Sweeny a lot. I'm a big Trey Sweeny guy. I have been since the draft a few years ago. But Ferris has the most upside. And, just from a value perspective, I'd say maybe the Dodgers are losing out from a value perspective in this Cubs deal. But I think you had to do something. You have Busch, you have Miguel Vargas. There isn't a lot gained either for each of them or for the organization just by letting them sit in AAA all year with no shot to break into what's going to be a pretty stacked offense.
Yeah. Okay, before we get to some of these questions we got from Twitter, questions from Twitter, let me get your thoughts briefly on a couple prospects that got sent out of the organization. Ryan Pepio and Johnny DeLuca headed to Tampa Bay in exchange for Tyler Glasnow, who ends up signing an extension. I was firmly on the record with that I really was bummed to see Ryan Pepio go. When Glasnow signed the extension, it made me feel a little bit better about this deal. When I talked to injury people about Glasnow and their projections of his health moving forward, it made me feel a little bit better. But Pepio and DeLuca, to me, feels like that was a tough one for me to swallow, even if I've come around on the return. So give me your thoughts on losing these two guys from the organization.
I think the big thing that you and maybe some other people who weren't fans of the deal, from what I saw, is losing Pepio, who had a great second half last year coming back from the injury. In hindsight, probably should have started Game 3 of the NLDS instead of Lance Lynn.
I don't even know if it was hindsight. I think most of us were saying it in real time, but to be fair.
Hindsight and foresight. And had another 5 years of team control. Losing that doesn't feel great. That said, the Dodgers are rich in upper minors starting pitching.
Yeah.
If you look at Nick Frasso, River Ryan, Gavin Stone, Kyle Hurt, Landon Knack, like any one of those guys, you might be able to throw in as a number 5 or even number 6 if they go to a 6-man rotation next year. Back end starter, potentially. Ryan Pepio might be a little bit more than that, but I don't think he's a front end starter.
Okay.
Tyler Glasnow is a front end starter. He's an ace. When he's healthy, he is one of the best 10 or 15 pitchers in baseball. I don't know how many people would argue with that statement. The big question there is obviously when he's been healthy, because he hasn't been. I think you and I have seen a lot of the same stuff with regard to the durability.
Yeah.
Hopeful that it'll not be as much of an issue. But what the Dodgers needed, this is pre-Yamamoto signing, they needed a frontline starter.
Yeah.
Shohei Ohtani wasn't going to be around to pitch this year. You have Walker Buehler coming back from his second Tommy John surgery, and return from second Tommy John are a lot more questionable than a return from the first Tommy John.
Yeah.
There is not a long list of guys who've come back successfully at a super high level or at the same level they were before from the second TJ surgery. Not saying Buehler can't do it, but that's something you're dealing with. And he wasn't going to start the year and pitch the whole year anyways.
Right.
And with Ohtani, the year after that. So you need a frontline starter, at least before you get Yamamoto.
You needed it after Yamamoto, for being honest. They needed multiple.
Yeah. And Tyler Glasnow is very much a frontline starter.
Yeah.
I think when we talked after the sweep last year, it was what doomed the Dodgers?
Yeah.
Starting pitching.
Yeah.
It was the offense didn't perform, but the starting pitching was not good. The starting pitching did not give them an opportunity to win those games because they gave up runs early. And I don't think you're going to find many fans in disagreement that should be the focal point of their offseason in addition to Shohei Ohtani.
Yeah.
But you're getting a frontline guy and trading Pepio, who I think optimistically is a mid-rotation starter, but maybe more of a back-end guy. Yes, he's got the 5 years of control. Johnny DeLuca, probably a platoon guy who can play all 3 outfield positions, but not like a first division regular. I don't have an issue with that. Yeah, I think when you are going after elite talent, sometimes you have to pay a little more than you'd like to, or pay a little more than from a value perspective you might feel is even. But the elite talent benefits your team in a lot of ways.
Yeah. No, like I said, I mean, my views on this trade have moved positively when I heard that Glasnow did sign an extension, because at first it was like we're giving up 5 years of control from Pepio for just 1 year of control in Glasnow. And then secondly, as I talked to injury people and said, hey, don't worry about the elbow. The elbow is not going to be the issue. And, the elbow may have been an issue for a lot of this time missed. And so now that that's cleaned up, you might be all right, and yada, yada, yada. So those two things make me feel good. I mean, DeLuca was an Oregon Duck too. I mean, we can't not mention that. And so I've joked that he might be better than Manny Margot is right now, but look, this is the cost of doing business sometimes.
But look, you lose DeLuca, you keep Dan Lanning. Maybe you call that a win.
No, it's a massive win. Yesterday, my life could do no wrong when Dan Lanning announced that he was coming back to Oregon. Let's get to some questions here. We got a bunch. You're a popular guy. Hey, we're going to do some questions with Justin Lorber, and sure enough, I've got to trim these down. So apologies if we didn't get to every single person's question. We're going to get through as many of these as possible. Let me start with one. This is a me question. International free agency just around the corner, a few days away. Have the Dodgers been linked to any guys kind of at the top of the international free agency list?
Yes, they have. Their top expected signing is Emil Morales, who's a shortstop, I believe, from the Dominican Republic. And if you look at the past, I guess now it is 6 years. So this will be the 6th international free agency class since the Dodgers, were released from international free agency jail for their bid spending spree in 2015. Of those 6 classes, including the one that starts in a couple days, 4 of their top guys have been top 5 consensus players in the class: Diego Cartaya, Luis Rodriguez, Wilman Diaz, and Yoendry Vargas. Now, that's not an illustrious list full of successes.
Yeah.
Luis Rodriguez and Wilman Diaz, I don't think you can call them successes at this point. Maybe they turned around, but not looking super likely. Diego Cartaya was one of the best catching prospects in baseball, if not the best catching prospect in baseball a year ago at this time.
Yeah.
He has certainly fallen off. He struggled a lot at AA, but not going to close the book on him at all. Yoendry Vargas had a fantastic start last year, but is still very much a teenager, has not seen it bat in the United States yet. Still a long ways to go.
Yeah.
Samuel Munoz, the other guy, besides Emil Morales, who maybe not top 5 consensus, but top, 15, 10, 20, somewhere in that range. So certainly a good player, but not best player in the class.
Yeah.
That said, you don't have to be.
Yeah.
The current best player that the Dodgers have gotten from international free agency in their minor league system right now is Josue De Paula, who was not ranked on any of these lists. So guys develop, top guys fall off a little bit. It's tough to predict these guys when they are 16 and 17 years old, how the next 5, 6, 7, 10 years are going to play out.
Yeah.
But yeah, Emil Morales is the guy.
And you said he's kind of in the 10 to 15-ish range across different rankings.
From what I've seen, yeah.
Okay, cool.
And there should be some more content on that this week that might be able to provide a little bit more details, or maybe some updated rankings, new rankings, and whatnot.
Speaking of international free agents that may or may not be coming to the United States in 2024, Roki Sasaki is a guy that would be in this class. Most teams will commit most of their money on January 15th because they've already been negotiating. Sasaki is a guy that there have been rumors could be posted within the next 12 months, which would fall under this class. Obviously, if he did, we were talking, he wouldn't be coming for the money, but the Dodgers would need to have some money to spend in that. The question here, this was from our friend Purple Drink over on Twitter. He said, where does Sasaki rank compared to the other top prospects in Major League Baseball? He mentioned Paul Skeens in that list. I remember people were asking this question about Yamamoto. If Sasaki were to come over, where would you have him? Are we talking a top 20 prospect immediately in Major League Baseball? Is he a top 10 prospect? I see you nodding your head. Is he a top 5 prospect? How good is this guy?
I think up there for best pitching prospect in baseball.
Okay, so he's Paul Skeens. He's right up there.
Yeah, and if you look at if he was in the minor leagues right now, or he was in the draft class next year, yeah, you're talking about a guy who's already, maybe there's some guys who really like Paul Skeens. I would probably take Sasaki over him.
Okay.
In terms of who's the best pitching prospect, he's up there. If you're thinking about the last few years of like top pitching prospects, he's really good. There's a reason why people are talking about him, and he's not even eligible for like the full posting in terms of like big contract for another 3 off seasons.
Yeah. How does he compare to Yamamoto? I mean, is this a guy, on one hand, I'll ask this. Is he a guy that, like, if he signs next winter, is he on a major league roster, like, immediately? And how does he compare to Yamamoto, who's a few years older than him?
Yeah, so if you threw both of them in the major leagues right now and you asked who's going to have a better year, no question, Yamamoto.
Okay.
But he's older.
Yeah.
He's had more experience. He's won 3 consecutive Japanese version of the Cy Young Award.
Yeah.
But the upside with Roki Sasaki is huge. Fastball velocity, the splitter is fantastic. This has been like someone, even from when he was like 18, like this is going to be a guy. Yeah. He has not come out of nowhere. He has been firmly on the radar. Major league teams have known about him. I think the Dodgers or maybe even other teams tried to sign him out of high school. The whole idea that he might come over early is he might have some clause in his contract like Shohei Ohtani did that says, when I want to go in the major leagues, I will get posted, not, when I turn 25 or free agency or whatever.
Crazy. Okay, let's get to some more questions. This is from Nomo Splitter. Do you think EMT Sheen would benefit from another half season in the minor leagues, or is he on a team that had the need? Is he just a pull off the governor and let it rip?
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't hurt. Obviously, his development was a little weird last year, having come up straight from Double-A in a situation where I think he capably held his own, but I don't know if you'd call him major league ready last year. So yeah, I think he would benefit. There certainly might be a scenario, especially if Walker Buehler is not at pitching at the start of the season, as been reported, where he's one of the Dodgers' best 5 or 6 starters. Yeah, wouldn't hurt.
I'll just, as a follow-up to that, behind Bobby Miller and EMT Sheen, there's a group of guys that are kind of now on the 40-man roster. Gavin Stone, Kyle Hurt, Frasso, right? Landon Knack, that's who I was thinking of. Landon Knack, I mean, I guess Michael Grove sort of still technically in that category. Of those 5, who do you like? If I fast forwarded to the All-Star break and you had to pick one of those 5 to make a start for you, who do you think you'd pick? Knowing that we're talking, Frasso might be the highest ranked guy, but he might be the least ready guy also.
Yeah, so I think we're going to take out River Ryan, who isn't on the 40-man, just for that reason, with no regard to talent or ability. He's got to be added to the 40-man next offseason, but the other 4 are already on the 40-man, just makes it easier. I think probably Knack or Hurt is who I would Hurt, or having already been up in the majors a little bit.
And Hurt's still a starter, right? Like, I mean, I know we saw him as a reliever, but by all accounts, they're going to try him as a starter still.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, someone who I think could do very well in relief, even a multi-inning role. Yeah. But, I think, and rightfully so, most of the time, Dodgers start their guys until they show they can't start anymore, or there's some big need in the bullpen, which I don't necessarily see that emerging.
Yeah, it was interesting when I interviewed Michael Grove. I kind of asked him about that, and he was basically like, starting is always plan 1A. And I think he's talking personally, but organizationally, it's the same. 2 different people kind of asked the same question. Kevin and Henry both asked, is there one or two under the radar prospects who you feel like might have some helium this year? So maybe a guy who's outside of the top 20 that 6 months at your midseason rankings, you wouldn't be surprised to see kind of flirting with the top 10.
So outside the top 20. So are we doing outside my top 20, outside of like the popular consensus top 20?
Let's go popular consensus.
All right. So,
and I use the top 20 into the sort of top 10 to 12, but if there's a guy that, 80 to 25 or something, however you want to say it.
Yeah. So I'll go a few guys. Going way down to the bottom levels of the minor leagues. Eduardo Quintero had a phenomenal year, statistically even better than Yoendry Vargas.
Wow.
So Eduardo Quintero also signed as part of last year's international free agent class, was a catcher, but I wanted to preserve the bat, and he's got the tools to play center field. He has the athleticism, so he's
Catcher to center field is
now.
It's not the common transition that you see.
Yeah, it's like Dalton Varsho, and I'm not sure, but he didn't catch it all last year.
Okay.
All intents and purposes, I think you're looking at him as an outfielder now. Very excited to see what he does. I assume he will come over, play in the Arizona Complex League with Yoendry Vargas. Another guy from that same international group, Jesus Tolero, is a right-handed pitcher, was the best pitcher the Dodgers signed last year. Also had a phenomenal pro debut in the Dominican Summer League, mid-90s fastball, ton of vertical break and carry to it. Big fan of his. Looking forward to seeing what he can do stateside. We're moving up a little bit in the minor leagues. We talked about Hope as someone who could kind of emerge as a breakout prospect. Thinking about some other guys, I will go with Austin Gothier.
Okay.
I'm pronouncing it. I hope it's not Gothier. It might be Gothier.
Somebody asked a question about him that I didn't write down, so that person's going to be very happy to hear you talk about him.
So this, I really think like this is peak like Dodgers development. Senior signee, undrafted free agent out of Hofstra, which absolutely no disrespect to the Hofstra baseball program. I don't think by any stretch you would call them a baseball powerhouse.
Okay. We're a big fan of no disrespect to. We call that a Daniel on this show. No disrespect to, and then say something disrespectful. So I respect that, and that's welcomed in this space.
Yeah, it is. But not a huge school, not a powerhouse athletic school, and all this to say, like the peripherals, like when you look at this and you don't know anything about Austin Gothier, you're like, well, what's the big deal? Has a great start to his pro career, more walks than strikeouts at Rancho. Hit really well too. He goes up to Great Lakes. He continues to hit. He continues to walk a bunch. He makes it to Double-A this year. Plays all over the field. He's a shortstop. He's played some second base. He's played some outfield. I think he's played some third base too. He's someone who very much profiles as this like utility infielder who the Dodgers found out of nowhere. And out of nowhere, he was an undrafted free agent.
Love it.
Turned into a very legitimate prospect.
Love that. Love that. All right. Let's see. I'm going to tweak a question that Brandon asked because we kind of had a few people ask this question. If you were in charge, what would you do with Miguel Vargas? Would you send him down to AAA and hope he learns how to play the outfield? How would you handle it moving forward, especially now that Michael Busch is out of the equation?
It is a good question, and I think you're faced with a similar scenario, although with Busch gone, there's a little bit less of a competition for at-bats. You don't want to send him down to AAA with no path to the majors, and, from a personal level, have him see that, feel like there's not a reward at the end of the tunnel there. But from a, putting the GM hat on value perspective, you don't want him to sit at AAA and either not do as well, or teams be like, well, he's doing well, why aren't they calling him up?
Yeah.
If you're looking at next year's team, and injuries can happen, but as it stands right now, it's tough to find a way for Miguel Vargas to get it back. Still a guy who I think has a major league career in front of him.
Yeah.
So not someone where it's like, oh, the Dodgers have to trade him. And he's a few years younger than Michael Busch too.
Yeah, I was going to say two full years. He's only just turned 24. Michael Busch just turned 26. So I do think that's worth pointing out.
Yeah. There's some time there. I would not trade him. I think he probably starts the year at AAA, and whether it's injuries, whether underperformance, or whether there's just a role for him that he forces his way into, I think that would be the goal. So
what's his position moving forward?
I mean, ideally, it's moving around. If Mookie Betts is the everyday second baseman, but he's playing some days at right field, someone's covering second base, whether it's Gavin Lux or Max Muncy or Miguel Vargas. Someone's covering second base, though, those days. Max Muncy is going to be the regular third baseman, might not play every day, especially against lefties. If Miguel Vargas is up, might be a guy who's playing as sorry, I lost my train of thought. Playing third base against lefties. but
Yeah.
also maybe some outfield too, probably better in the infield.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, a couple more questions here, and we'll rapid fire these. Is Geloff a plan post Muncy at third base?
It would be great if he is. I don't think he's the caliber of prospect where you're penciling him in 2026 as the Dodgers' third baseman of the future. I don't think the Dodgers have a third baseman of the future right now, and if they do, probably more likely to be Miguel Vargas than Jake Geloff. No offense to Jake Geloff, but Miguel Vargas is closer.
That was from Roger Durr. This one's from Mothman is back. Rapid fire. You don't have to even explain if you don't want to, but which catcher are you betting on post Will Smith?
It has to be Dalton Rushing, I think. Okay. No question. After this past season, no question.
I am board 44. Why is River Ryan the best pitching prospect in the system?
River Ryan might be. I don't know if I think that yet. I need to do some more thinking about it.
Who's in the conversation with him?
I think for me, it's Frasso or Ryan.
Okay.
If River Ryan is your top pitching prospect in the system, and I think it's very reasonable to think so, it's because of the stuff he's already shown. And age-wise, yeah, I think he's 25. Just turned 25 over the summer, I believe, because I think he has the same birthday as Yamamoto. I think that was like an interesting factoid that came up when the Dodgers signed him. He hasn't been pitching full-time that long. He was a two-way player in college. Like, the mileage on the arm and the development time he's had as a pitcher alone is not as much as his 25-year-old peers.
Okay.
Guys the same age who've been pitching full-time as a pitcher only since they were in high school or something like that. So there is more room for him to grow than the average 25-year-old. And he's already a good prospect too.
Two more questions. Tom wants to know, is Andy Pages a right-handed Jock Peterson, and has the shoulder injury derailed any hope of him making his debut in 2024?
As you know, I'm a huge Andy Pages fan, devastated by the injury last year. Shoulder injuries are tough. It is tough to say, especially for a power hitter like that. Hopefully he's back. Fernando Tatis is an example of a guy who was able to come back and perform pretty well after shoulder surgery. In terms of outcomes, like he's a very much a three true outcomes type of player, similar to Jock Peterson.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd make that comp like overall. But actually, maybe a little, because Jock Peterson, when he first came up, was a center fielder. Pages might be able to hold down center field for a little bit, but probably best in the corner.
Okay.
It's an interesting comp. I don't know if it works across the board, but offensive outcomes, yes.
Okay. Last question here. This is Oscar asked about him. A couple people mentioned him. Justin Wroblewski. Give me your thoughts on him.
Yeah, I think if you're talking about the tier after like Frasso, Ryan, Hurt, Stone, if you have Wroblewski at the top of that tier, very reasonable.
Okay.
Took a big step forward this year, first full season post Tommy John. Fastball is good, curveball is good. Was a little surprised he didn't get moved up to AA at some point. He spent the whole year at high A. Should start out the year at AA. He's got to be added to the 40-man after this coming year. So next off season, he's got to be added to the 40-man. Not a super crazy list. I think he's got a good shot. Him and River Ryan, I'd say right now, and Trey Sweeny, probably the top three candidates to be added next offseason.
Okay. Stuff. Amazing. Justin, you're amazing. You know all these names. I joked that one of the names that somebody submitted, I didn't even know if that was a real prospect. You knew who he was and had him like, yeah, he's down towards 100. So amazing stuff. I know you've got all sorts of stuff going on. Anything coming out soon that people should keep their eye on? I don't know if you're doing a preseason ranking or what you've got planned.
Preseason rankings will be out preseason.
Okay.
Not soon, at some point between now and April or March.
Okay. Perfect. And we're fired up about Ohtani and Yamamoto and Glass now, I assume, over there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like – I think if you had asked me start of the offseason, like, what's the goal? Ohtani or Yamamoto.
Yeah, that's where I was.
Ohtani and Yamamoto and Glass now and Teoscar Hernandez. Yeah, it's great. Great time to be a Dodger fan.
Aside from the Dodgers ruining the sport, I would say it's been a good offseason for us.
Yeah, cheating, breaking the CBA, having the highest payroll when they're actually in third place.
Yeah.
You know, all the things that people who could take 10 seconds to read on the internet but have somehow lost the ability to read.
Yeah, it's amazing. They didn't cheat. They didn't break the CBA. They don't even have the highest payroll, and yet here we are. People are mad. So that's Justin Lorber. Check him out at Future Dodgers, at futuredodgers.com as well. Tons of content. Like he said, his preseason rankings list coming out at some point in the next few months. Justin, thank you as always for your time, folks. We appreciate you joining us. You can subscribe, ring the notification bell here on YouTube if you're a podcast person. Check out Dodger Heads on Apple, Spotify, and Google as well. Enjoy the rest of your day, folks. As always, go Dodgers.